All right, welcome in everyone. Um, if anyone notices, hopefully the better video quality I have going. I'm on my phone right now as opposed to my laptop. We had some internet issues getting this up. Hopefully the audio sounds fine for me. I'm doing this straight off the speaker. Richie said it sounds good, and maybe the boys will get it in post. Go over a few hot topics, I guess, today. One of the first ones we kind of wanted to start it off with was the cultural ice age that we're seemingly going through. I'd seen a video about this online, but wanted to talk about it more here. Essentially, what the synopsis of that video was saying was everything that we're seeing right now is some form of requel, prequel, sequel in movies for sure. TV shows getting rehashed and redone for no other reason than pure money ploys, it's seemingly. We're kind of stuck in this state of nostalgia in the term that, in the sense that we can't really seem to have a lot of new cultural ideas. He was also talking about in that video that this idea of like soft clubbing that he's seen going around, where people, instead of going out to like insane discotheques, nightclubs, and dancing the night away, they go out to like a coffee shop and they play like some like light music and still bright lights, and everyone's kind of way more chill vibes, as one might say. But he was kind of saying like it's kind of like the death of counterculture, essentially. Like the rave scene is supposed to be this sort of outlet for expressionism, and now it's getting turned into just another way of branding yourself, another way of being totally under the public spotlight, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, so the movies and shows and stuff like that, I've definitely been noticing, and that I mean, I don't know if that is, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing where I don't know if that's an indicator that as a society, we are choosing to look back on the past rather than create and be artistic about new ideas, or or if it is or if it's on the producer side where it's like the producers of these movies know that it's a safe bet. They know they can get a bunch of people to come out to the new Star Wars movie or the new Harry Potter movie, and trying to create a new story might be taking a risk. They know they've got consumers kind of already entrenched in the storylines. They know the characters, so it's easier to just spit out another Marvel movie or something. I do think it's kind of a symbiotic relationship where the more they do that, then the more it kind of molds the culture in that way as well. So I mean, who started it? I don't know for sure, but it they're definitely kind of working off each other. Where the more the producer puts out, that's all kind of the same thing. Then that's more what the consumer prefers, and then the demand for that goes up, which incentivizes the producer to produce more of that. I think that's probably what we're seeing mostly when it comes to entertainment. Also, I think a lot of the new generations aren't really watching movies that much, nearly as much as they used to. I think they're all on TikTok and YouTube and things like that. And so a lot of when you look at these movies and shows, a lot of them are trying to appeal to kids, but because the kids aren't watching, they now appeal to the adults who watch these things as kids. So someone like our age who kind of grew up with Harry Potter, they might be incentivized to go and want to watch the new Harry Potter rather than some new kids movie. But as far as the what are they called again? The like rave
Like
coffee
soft,
shops.
soft clubbing.
Yeah, yeah. That I don't know what's up with that. I think that's probably I would guess that might be people who are, they might see like because there is still real raves, like the rave culture is still
Yeah,
a
for
real
sure.
thing. Maybe it's just the people who like see those and they want to kind of do it in a way that,
Yeah.
they don't actually really want to be part of the counterculture, but they just kind of want to like I think you're right about that. I think it's kind of just like, oh, it looks cool, like or they think it does at
Well,
least. They
and
think
I mean,
something to do that's like, oh yeah, this is I can picture someone who's like, you know, in their 30s, like trying to still live the glory days, hitting one of those up.
yeah, and I don't know. One of my big things is I'm not here to take away anyone's toys, right? Like, if you have fun doing that, like, more power to you, right? It's kind of just, I think, what he was talking about, like the broader, more general term, like, especially like post COVID, how people are so much less social, I think is kind of also what he was going for. It's like now instead of like partying the night away, you like meet up for like an hour at this coffee place, sort of deal. I also wanted to, you're talking about like the economics of it a little bit in like the movie scene, whether it's the studio's fault or the consumer's fault, probably a bit of both. But here's another aspect of why are people like only going and seeing, like those big blockbuster types of movies is the economics is a lot of people don't have the money to go to the movies like that often, right? Buying a movie ticket used to be like, all right, a few bucks. Now it's if you're going with a family, $10, $15 a ticket. If you get snacks, you're paying an arm and a leg. So that
Probably
becomes
more than that. I think last time I went, it was like over 20
yeah,
for
and
a
that's
ticket.
just to get in. If you want like a popcorn and like a drink, that's another 20 or 30 probably, right? Times that by four people, that's a whole ordeal. That's not like, oh, let's go see this new movie that came out. That's like, well, we have to like plan this all out. It's gonna take up like a big chunk of the budget possibly this month for a lot of families, right? So instead of seeing like numerous movies every couple of weeks or whatever, you're going and seeing one every few months, and you're only going to see the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah, part of it too is a lot of them are coming out straight to Amazon or straight to there's so much content out there where why am I gonna go spend $50 per person to go sit in, like, a public space and watch a movie when, like, there's not that much how it used to be where it would be months before it comes out on DVD or something. There's not so much of that anymore. I think there's a lot of things that go into that, but where I thought you were going was that another thing that I kind of forgot to touch on too was when it comes to these big blockbusters, I mean, they already have the rights and the licenses to these movies and all of these, these cinematic universes, and they have so much money to spend on media and where there is new stories coming out. Surely, I mean, there's more content coming out now than ever. Different types of content, podcasts, reels, but also movies and shows and stuff like that. But they just don't get nearly as much of the hype as the big companies do, who can throw down the money to
For
make sure it's
marketing
in all
and
the commercials, yeah, all the
yeah.
marketing, and they can hire the best, well-known actors, and they've got the rights to, look at like Disney, they've got the rights to Marvel, to Star Wars, to like every Pirates of the Caribbean, everything. And so why would they take the chance and try to create something else when they can just keep squeezing these things dry until, they can make, 50 Star Wars movies or something, and it'll just be guaranteed profit. I do think this is one of those cases where it's like the bottom line being the main incentive is destroying the quality,
Yes.
or at least the creativity, that should be in something like this. It's, it's art, it's entertainment, it's a form of art.
No, because there is still great original stories being told, as you said, right? It's just the fact that they don't get as much attention, really. And here's another thing is making movies has gotten so much more expensive. So like what you were saying, right? Disney can either spend $200 million coming up with a new original animated kids movie that might flop, might not sell any toys, or they can make like you said, Star Wars prequel number 32, and you have a built-in fan base that's literally going to basically watch it no matter how good or bad it is because they just have such a loyal following for some of these franchises. And yeah, it's like again, we live in a world of quarterly reports and yearly sales is all that really matters. So if you're some executive or whatever, some guy top brass up at Disney, one of these places, you're gonna make something that's gonna bring in some fucking money. You're not spending 200 mil on and like ripping a chance on something. If you're spending 200 mil, you're spending it on something that's gonna bring home some revenue.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of these, I know Disney did try putting out some new concepts through Pixar over the last decade or so, and a lot of them came out as a net negative. They actually lost money, at least, right off the bat in the box office, which they probably, yeah, I mean, doesn't make sense to take that risk if you're
So
looking
yeah,
at it
that's
only from a money perspective.
again, it's like a chicken or egg thing. It's like, all right, so are they worse at making movies than they were in the early 2000s when it was Toy Story, Monsters Inc., Incredibles, just a pantheon of amazing content? Have they lost that like creative spark? So now when they make original content, it's not as good? Or is it flip flopped? People are like, ah, I want to watch The Incredibles. I don't want to watch this new shit.
Yeah, I mean, no, most people I've talked to have the same kind of idea we do, that they're kind of craving something new, but they aren't getting it. But I'm also wondering if something like that, like Disney, Pixar, I mean, these are targeting kids. Maybe it's that the kids don't, because could be the movie is not the best format or best medium for entertainment anymore. So they're just kind of like, yeah, well, they're sticking with the classics. I mean, could this be the end of movies? Being a part of the mainstream culture, I guess. Obviously, there will always be movies, but um, I mean, yeah, when you look at like the big blockbuster hits, I can't even really think of one in the last couple years that wasn't a, like you said, a remake or a sequel. I mean, I'm sure there's a few out there, but I mean, some of the best ones I can think of are all just spin-offs of something else. Like I can think of the Joker movie a couple years back was pretty good. That's just a Batman. You know, how many new Batmans are there? All the Star Wars movies, Marvel movies, those have always grabbed the limelight. And even on like Netflix, it's all a lot of documentaries and stuff like that about things that were popular back in the day. The Charlie Sheen documentary is like the number one hit on Netflix right now. Charlie Sheen was a big star 20 years ago. I've been seeing a lot of these like kind of like expository documentaries about like the old show The Biggest Loser. There was one of them where everyone who was on that show 20 years ago is coming back and telling behind the
Yeah,
scenes
right.
stuff, you
So
know?
it's like, oh, hang on. Instead of making a new Biggest Loser, let's just piggyback off of the success of that show, make like the documentary of the Biggest Loser, right? That's kind of what they're going for now. It's again, it's a cultural ice age, which is what we started the show with. It's the fact that we're kind of stuck in this stasis that no one seemingly can break out of. It's a sign of kind of society, I would say.
Yeah, the thing that annoys me too about those documentaries is that they're all very like destructive and negative. Like you and which makes sense. I mean, if there was if everything behind the scenes of
But
Nickelodeon was all
well,
fun and games, there wouldn't be a
right,
documentary.
right.
But it is kind of a, I think it's a result of that problem where if all we can do as it, you know, creative, for our creative endeavors, all we can do is go back and analyze the past. It's like, well, then all we're going to do is pump out like all of these things that kind of destroy the idea in people's minds of, you know, look at the Nickelodeon one. I mean, obviously I'm a fan of them exposing all the bad stuff that went down there, but I mean, that just kind of, you know, you think of like your childhood, that's like a major part of your childhood. And then it's like, okay, well,
That's a
we're going to
major
bring,
part of our age group's
yeah,
childhood.
the entire generation, and it's like, "Alright, well, that's destroyed now." And then, Charlie Sheen, probably a little bit before our time, but if you were like a big Two and a Half Men guy, then that's probably one of your main, kind of entertainers back in the day. Like, "Oh, yeah, that he had to look at all the stuff he was doing behind the scenes." It's all this, like it's like unveiling the facade that was put up that just, like, reveals all the dark stuff that, you know, back in the day we all thought was like the happy stuff. And so that's not good, I imagine, for most people who are coming up and kind of realizing like all of the stuff that I thought that I liked as a kid or, you know, back when I was younger, is it there was all this like dark like side of it that I didn't see, and now it's all being revealed to me, you know, it's kind of depressing.
Dude, do you ever watch the either podcast or like documentaries of like true crime?
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah, I've seen some good ones.
Yeah, like 2-ish years back, I was listening to like a true crime podcast pretty heavily, and I really enjoyed it. Like, it is objectively interesting, right? It's pretty insane stories. It's everyone has a fascination to some extent with it. After a while, though, I started kind of feeling bad about it, about myself a little bit, because I realized it was now my opinion on it, it's almost like a gross form of voyeurism. You're watching and gaining entertainment from the absolute worst thing that can happen to anyone, like anyone who they interview, like the family of victims, whatever. It's like this is the worst day of their entire lives, and you're like watching it for entertainment.
Yeah, and it also kind of gives a little bit of a, not necessarily glorification, but it gives the attention to the killer, you know,
Yeah,
if all every serial killer gets a documentary, that incentivizes some other disturbed kid to potentially, you know, if they starve for attention and are willing to do anything to become famous, that, you know, not that that would happen very often, but it is a possibility.
it's a fucking thing. I mean, that's why in years past they never used to show like killers' names or faces on the news, but now they have no goddamn morals at all, and they just plaster that shit up all over, and it's the only thing anyone talks about.
Yeah. No, there is some podcasters I listen to who intentionally will not say the name or show the anytime there's like a school shooting or a murder or anything. They like won't say the name, won't show the face. Now, obviously, there's so many out there that, and most of them are showing the name and face, so everyone can find them if they want to. But like Ben Shapiro is a guy who just makes a point to not. He will say, right, like, I'm not going to say the name, I'm not going to show him, but and then he'll just describe him as the killer for the rest of the, you know, information segment.
Yeah, I like that. Um, I like one, maybe two things left to touch on. I don't know if you had anything else, but the you said the movie like the medium of movies might not be the best anymore, might not be like the best, most attention grabbing thing in this, modern mile a minute culture. I see a lot of things online that concerns me. I feel it myself as well. I'm not saying I'm above this. I don't think I'm as bad as the videos that I see. Probably people are exaggerating to get clicks, obviously. But people are basically saying like it feels like a chore watching a movie now. They're like, I can't sit and focus through a movie. Like I'm like scrolling on my phone. I'm like trying to check like the comments, like shit like that. Like anytime I pull up a TikTok, I go straight to the comments to get additional fucking dopamine hits, additional information in my system. People are like, oh, I watch TikToks on times two speed now, but just because I have no patience, essentially,
That's
right? And
crazy.
like, I'll do that shit too sometimes if it's like a longer video. The guy talks slow, but yeah, and everyone says like, oh, I used to like love reading when I was younger, but I can't sit down and like focus and read on a book, which I can still do that, thankfully.
Yeah,
But
same, but I really have to make I really have to make an effort to do it. Like if I just like I have to like there I have to be like disciplined and intentional if I want to sit and read a book and like put my phone down somewhere and stuff because I won't be able to just, leisurely do it. Same with just like watching movies like you said and stuff like that. I mean, one I'm not as bad with constantly being on TikTok and watching stuff in fast speed, but I am pretty bad where I need to always have like if I'm like walking to work, I'll have a podcast going. Like I'm not good if I'm just like sitting in silence doing something. I'll always have my AirPods in listening to something.
dude, I think that is one of the biggest issues that's not talked about enough is that aspect where these phones, we can now have a form of passive, like, content at all times. All innovation stems from like boredom, right? People used to like sit around, not have anything to do, so that they'd like invent things. They would try and think of ways to do things better, more efficiently, smarter. But now, so many great minds, I bet, are just fucking wasting away on their phones just because you're just caught in that dopamine loop.
Yeah, I do think it's a good idea to take like a weekend or something, if possible, even, once every 6 months and like actually go somewhere without your phone. One thing I like is I have a work phone and a personal phone. My work phone has nothing on it. It's just text messages and emails from work, basically, which I can just, like if I take a vacation, I kind of, there's times where I need to respond, but it's not like I'm constantly being distracted by Instagram, TikTok, stuff like that. So a lot of times if I'm looking to just get rid of my personal phone, which is like, all the dopamine hits, but also still have a way to contact people in case anything goes down. I have a little bit of an out there. But for most people who don't have that situation, it's impossible because it's like, well, I'm not going to go somewhere without my phone. What if I needed to call somebody? And then if I have my phone, I know I'm just subconsciously and impulsively going to be constantly looking at it, and I'm going to be incapable of just enjoying the moment that I'm in or trying to sit around and brainstorm and clear my mind. It's like almost impossible.
I'm sure I've brought this up before on the podcast, but the phone is a part of our bodies now. You feel like you are missing a part of you when you don't have it.
Yeah, it's a part of our bodies. It's just basically an extension of our brain. Because if you think about it,
Yeah.
everything you have in your phone, if you have pictures, that's just things that you saw that you wanted to save. Everything in your phone, every text you sent is just like thoughts that you had. It's all just like an
Right.
extension of your
It's
own
almost
thoughts.
just like a extended like data pack for your phone,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Or
It's
for your
additional
brain.
memory,
Yeah,
additional data
it's an
storage.
additional memory for your brain that you can go back and reference anytime you need. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to use it is just additional memory and try to not use it for like like stimulation. Although I mean, obviously that is the goal, but it's impossible basically.
You know what a big one I've seen is turn your color gradient off on your phone. Make it black and
Ooh,
white.
that's pretty good. I never heard that one. That
Because
actually sounds like it would make a big difference.
dude, because I've seen this shit with like kids shows these days too. Like the show Bluey. Apparently, it is. Oh no, Bluey's not bad. Bluey's one of the good ones, I think. What is it? Coco Melon. That's one of the bad ones. Coco Melon. They saturate all of the colors as high as they can possibly go. So it's literally just fucking like casino lights in your eyes constantly to like toddlers. So you just see them like doing that
Yeah,
shit when they're
they're just
watching
pumping
Coco
them full of dopamine
when they're
basically.
watching Coco Melon, but then like shows like that we grew up on, they didn't fucking do that shit. right? So
Yeah.
that's like different that way. But yeah, going back to the color grading on your phone, it's like go on TikTok, go on Instagram, and look at it in black and white, and it instantly like turns you off to it. It's like what am I doing here essentially, right? So it kind of just forces you to kind of curtail some of that behavior a little bit.
I might actually do that. That sounds like a good idea. Because I mean, I'm not too terrible with it, but I do find myself getting caught up on the reels. Like I don't even know. Like I'll just kind of like like come to consciousness and be realizing I've spent 20 minutes on this thing and I didn't even mean to. I meant to be doing something else.
I've done it. Like I've turned it off and it's a stark difference. And honestly, I haven't been able to keep it off. Like I would have it on for like 20, 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, this is dumb. Like, give me back.
Honestly, I'm gonna give it a try. See if I can do it. Feel like
It's
once that happens, it'll also just be like a reminder too of like, oh yeah, I don't want to do this. That's why I have this on.
no, like, yeah, exactly. I think that's like a really good thing people can try.
But yeah, I would say a big thing too. I meant to say this when you mentioned earlier, but reading books. I mean, if obviously it's important for everyone to have like some type of decompression time, which you shouldn't spend just like pumping dopamine into your brain by watching like some TikToks or whatever. But that's like the default for most people because we're human. That's what our brain's trained to do. But I am a big fan of like putting the phone off and reading a book for like 30 minutes or even or an hour, and it's like it almost is like it feels like exercising for your brain a little bit. Like you kind of, even though it's like the same information you could have gotten from a YouTube video 10 times faster, but it just still feels like healthy in some way. I don't know.
All right, we're talking about books now. So I kind of wanted to bring this up. Well, I just thought about this earlier. I didn't really want to talk about it in here, but it's come up naturally. Do you read like much fiction at all?
No, I don't. I used to a lot, and I think the last fiction thing I read was Game of Thrones, and I got through like the first 2 books, and then I got on the 3rd one, and I took some time without reading it and was starting to forget who the characters were, and I just kind of
Yeah,
fell off of it.
that'll happen. Dude, the Game of Thrones books are really good. I did them on an audiobook. They're like super long. But interesting statistic. Could you guess what percentage of fiction readers are male versus female?
I would bet that it's more female, I think. No?
Way more.
Is it?
90%, I think I saw
That
of
kinda makes sense to me for some I don't know if I know exactly why, but it seems
dude,
like
I can explain the
a real
zeitgeist of it. It's the
yeah,
fact
yeah,
that
what's the
like if you read fiction as a dude, you're somehow seen as like a fucking pussy. It doesn't make any sense. Like guys are supposed to read nonfiction books about how to win friends and influence people and the 33 ways to dominate all other life forms. And if you're not doing this to get rich, you're a fucking bitch books. And that's
yeah.
all that's acceptable to read as a man, apparently.
That makes sense. I was kind of basing it off the idea of that kind of like the cliche, I guess, but that women tend to care more about people and men tend to care more about things or focus more on things. Where that's why you see like in engineering, it's a lot more men than women. In finance, a lot more men than women. But in like nursing or teaching, it's a lot more women than men. I've heard that thrown around. It seems to be right. And I was thinking like the fiction, it's it's following characters, and women are just probably better at like empathizing, I guess, with characters, was my theory. But that also makes sense too. I'm sure that's adding to it of the fact that it's also just become probably stigmatized where, it's probably more acceptable or looked down upon less if a woman's reading a fiction book versus if a man is. Versus yeah, where if a woman's reading like the book, like some book about yeah how to make $1 million, then it's like it doesn't seem right in the cultural kind of zeitgeist.
Yeah, so you bring up empathy, which is another interesting thing I see get thrown around on my side of the algorithms. It's like, oh well, this is why so many young men are going down the alt-right pipeline is because they don't like read fiction. They can't like put themselves in someone else's shoes. And there's a whole thing, I don't know if you see it or not on your side, but the left seems to think that the right doesn't have empathy, which I think is complete bullshit.
I think it's fair to a degree. I don't think it's that they don't have it, but I think it would be reasonable argument to say that maybe less empathy might steer you towards being a little bit more right wing. I think that's fair.
There's a so I think that that's pretty bullshit. Like I kind of get it in theory a little bit, but then I heard this quote years ago. I don't know if I've ever told you it, but I think you'll agree with this. Is that liberals have empathy in like the hypothetical. Like, oh, should we give more money to poor people with healthcare? Yeah. Should we give more money to poor people for food stamps? Yeah. Those are left wing things, not right wing things. Republicans have more empathy for their neighbor, for like actual human beings, right? You see, and all the time, it's like, I went to school in Alabama, right? I was there for 4 years. You'll see so many more instances of like people helping out their local community, of, people like helping out their neighbor, like Southern hospitality that you will not find in as much in, like more liberal cities, right? So I like that breakdown more than anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think part of the reason for that, I mean, I can really only speak for myself and for the people I know or that I've listened to you talk a lot, but I think that makes perfect sense. And I think part of the reason why is that I think Republicans are more focused on the idea that empathy can be exploited. So, and that kind of fits in what you're saying, which is why, like, I'm more empathetic to someone who I know is not going to exploit my empathy versus like if it's someone I don't know, I'm much less inclined to act in an empathetic way because for all I know, they're just exploiting my empathy. They're trying to take advantage of someone who's giving them something. So I don't know if you. I guess that would be more just. I mean, insecurity. Not to say that in even a negative connotation. It just distrust maybe in or not paranoia, but I, for lack of a better word, I guess a little bit more paranoia about like being exploited by someone. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I see that thrown around a lot in leftist circles, and I really do not like that rhetoric that the right completely lacks empathy, because it's just categorically not true.
Yeah,
For first of all, and then second of all, you talk about dangerous rhetoric. It's like that's fucking dangerous rhetoric. Saying 50% of the population doesn't care about other people, like,
yeah, and I wouldn't mind so much if they say, well, maybe there's a possibility that a psychological trait that steers you to become more right wing versus more left wing is that you might have less empathy than someone on the left wing. I'd be all right with that simply because, kind of like I said, which is that I don't necessarily think that empathy. I don't think the maximum empathy is necessarily maximally good. I think there's healthy levels of empathy, and then you can have an unhealthy lack of empathy, or you can have like an unhealthy amount of too much empathy where you're easily taken advantage of and you're kind of enabling and you're walked all over. I don't think either of those are great. I think there's a healthy balance. And so I don't really take it too much as an insult necessarily if someone were to say, oh, you're right wing, therefore you have less empathy than me. Fair enough, I guess. I mean, that's all right. I wouldn't say that that's like a absolutely, crushing blow to me. But if you were to say, well, you have no empathy at all, that's kind of like okay, so you're basically
you're not human.
you're not human at that point, right? And that
Yeah,
that that is definitely like a demonization tactic.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. We got anything else there? You want to go on to the? I think this one ties in pretty well. Partnerism. You want to start that one off?
Yeah, okay. So I think, we've talked about a lot of stuff that has to do with it being very difficult to determine what truth is and people having two different ideas of truth. If you're on the right versus you're on the left, you tend to see truth differently. And for a while I was thinking, okay, well, that just means, I saw one headline in an algorithm and those on the left have seen something else in an algorithm and neither of us believe the other one's narrative basically, which is true. But as I started looking into postmodernism, what postmodernism is, so there was modernism originally, which was basically kind of like enlightenment philosophy of the scientific method where we can determine objective truth about things and we can base all of our other hypotheses off of that. Postmodernism is kind of the inverse of that, which is it arose in the 1970s in academia. And it's basically the idea that there is no such thing as objective truth and that all truth is really just used as anything that's called truth is basically being used as a weapon of power. So if something is known as the truth, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the objective truth. What it means is the people who want that to be the truth, the ones saying it, the ones who control the narrative, they're using that because it helps them maintain their power. And I think that on the left, people are much more inclined to believe in a postmodernist idea, which is why you see a lot of people on the left say things like "my truth." Well, that's my truth, and the right always says, "Well, there's no such thing as your truth. There is the truth." I think that's one of those fundamental divides that I never really noticed at first until recently. That when we try to talk about how could someone be a smart person, uh, a, a good person. I know people very well who are smart people, good people. Everything about them, seems very aligned with my morals and virtues. Yet we somehow align totally different when it comes to politics. And I can't understand why they think that way, and they can't understand why I think that way. And I think that could be one of those fundamental things where just the very idea of truth itself is one of those things, kind of like fascism, where the word kind of can mean different things to different people, and that's why everyone's kind of talking over each other. I think, in a sense, the word truth means different things to different people. And, when the word truth means different things to different people, well, then of course the other side's always lying because they're operating under a different definition of the word truth. So I found that to be kind of a interesting
Yeah.
field of discovery there that I wanted to make sure I shared on the podcast here.
Yeah. So you'd brought that up, and I'd heard of postmodernism. I hadn't looked into it too much, did a little reading on it. So I kind of want to rehash a little bit what you said. Modernism being, like you said, like scientific inquiry. You can like deduce facts that withstand like the test of time, objective truth. Postmodernism kind of says that truth is like locally based, all encompassing, kind of. That truth is more relative and to a narrative than it is to like a fundamental outlying like law, essentially. And I kind of was reading it, and I could kind of see some of what the postmodernism is saying to a certain aspect, because I do think that the truth that can be probably fundamentally untrue. Now that premise kind of necessitates an absolute truth, which I do believe in, right? However, when a narrative gets like played and played and played and played, that becomes the truth, right? Like for example, victors write the history. We can't really say for certain, take like Julius Caesar's battles or something like that. We can't know that that's actually how it went down, but it is our truth now. Like that is how it has been recorded. That has been the narrative for thousands of years. More or less, it is the truth now, whether or not it actually happened that way, right? So I kind of see in that aspect where that's saying. Then I started thinking, well, I can't really ever dispute. I can't see how anyone would be able to dispute saying something like the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. I can't fundamentally come up with something where you can disagree with that, and you can
Well, that's
go down
false.
to
The
you could
sun
go
doesn't
down
rise at all.
you could go
Sun
down
doesn't
some
rise at all. We spin around the sun, so that's
that's a fundamental untruth. But but we think that that's a fundamental untruth because that's what has been told to us, right? I've never done any fucking experiments to be able to
yes, yeah.
tell that the sun doesn't go behind the fucking clouds for 12 hours, right? And that's, again, you were bringing this up in COVID, trust the science. That's kind of the idea of modernism, right? Is trust the science. Now you're saying that you were saying on that episode, well, trust the science is actually kind of a crux because science is you're supposed to doubt science, right? So it doesn't that almost play into postmodernism a little bit?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, they're onto something. I'm not saying that they're
Right,
onto
right, right, right.
nothing. They're onto something there, and I agree with the first part you were saying about, say, something that happened in the Roman Empire, that it's in the history books, but we don't necessarily know it to be true exactly how it's written in the history books. That's but because it's written in the history books and because we all agree with it,
Then it's
does
true.
not make it true. That's where I would disagree on the definition of truth, because I would say the only people who know the actual truth, and even those people might not know the actual truth, are people who were there. But I mean, even eyewitness testimony tends to be wrong a lot, so maybe they don't even remember correctly. But regardless, even if nobody knows the truth, there is a truth. It did
Like
happen one way or another.
I have to say I agree with you there. Like it happened one way or another, right? So there is a truth, but we can't really know it. So the truth that we there might be two truths. There might be the actual truth and then the truth that's agreed upon, sort of.
Exactly, I agree, and part of that too, and going to the trust the science is that I do agree in the sense that we cannot know anything with absolute certainty, but we can know things with close to absolute certainty. But to trust the science, when that's said, I mean, if I guess that's another one where it could be interpreted two different ways. Now, if that's said saying don't trust random people spewing narratives, but instead trust what the data and the experiments have said, then yes, I agree. I'd rather trust the science over some type of religious narrative. But if the but what it's more often used for, and the problem is what people are saying, trust the science in order to shut down actual science, in order to shut down people who are saying, hang on, what about this though? Have we considered, people who actually know what they're talking about, saying, okay, I'm looking at this data, and yes, your theory is possible, but there's another theory that's also possible. And people say, no, 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 trust the science. When they say trust the science, they mean trust the scientists. And the scientists I would normally trust, except for, this aligned incentive structure, bureaucratic connections, things like that. But when it comes to actual science, yes, I do trust it. I wouldn't say it's absolute truth. I don't think a scientist believes in absolute truth necessarily. I think they believe that hang on, let me take that back. I don't think a scientist believes that he knows the absolute truth. I think a scientist believes that his goal is to get as close to the absolute truth as possible using the methods that are optimized to do that. So, like, collecting data, doing experiments, scientific method. The entire idea behind science is that, like, no one knows the absolute truth, but I'm going to use this data and collect enough evidence to get closer than anyone's gotten before. Even Isaac Newton thought he had it down, proved it mathematically, but then it turns out once we get access to the quantum realm, all of Newton's physics goes out the window because now things are following
And
different patterns.
the quantum realm, that could be complete fucking gibberish at this point. Most
It
of
could be.
most of
It could be.
most of it is likely gibberish.
I mean, but if I guess, yeah, at some point there is some trust involved. But I guess my problem with postmodernism though is that there is no way to ever change your mind. I think it's almost exclusive, or it's almost mutually exclusive with critical thinking, because here's the difference. Yes, we might not be able to determine the absolute truth, but what postmodern says is that the truth can be whatever you say it is. And so if the truth that I disagree with. It can't
Yeah.
be whatever you say it is. It can be a limited number of things that the goal should be to make those things smaller so we hone in on what the actual thing is. But with the postmodernist mindset, it opens up the idea, well, the truth is whatever we say it is. If enough people say this thing, that makes it true. And I think you see that when, it's kind of like when enough people say, Republicans are fascists or Republicans don't have empathy, well, that does kind of make it true in a way if we define truth as like what everybody believes, which is exactly what you said. The victor, history is written by the victor, and that part I think it's just toxic because how do you ever change your mind? How do you if the truth could be whatever you say it is, then you can
Right,
just
right.
you could just believe whatever you want, and then no one can ever change your mind.
I kind of I liked where you're going on that aspect for sure. Like, how do you get someone to change their mind? It is it is a pretty closed-minded way of thinking because like you said, you say, "Well, this is my truth." Like that, this is you can't take this away from me. This is what I believe. This is my truth, right? In that aspect, I do something either like is or it isn't, right? And that's kind of this is deep diving into the philosophy aspect of it. Something is either true or it isn't. And if we can collectively agree on truths to tell ourselves, that doesn't make it fundamentally true, though.
Yeah, I mean, even like a lot of societies who, were very religious, say like that was known as the truth, but
Yeah.
it wasn't fun. It wasn't like fundamentally true in the sense that we're talking about, but it was true. It was a collective truth amongst the society, and it actually benefited the society that they all believed in the same untruth.
Right.
And
Can I hop in there?
yeah.
Yeah.
So last thing I was gonna say is I think a
Yeah.
big part of this is that one reason that the government has, for most of recent history, always controlled the media in some way or another, or there's been a somewhat centralized form of media, is so that they can kind of it doesn't make it true. It's more of an untruth. But if it's a narrative that everyone in the entire collective society believes to be true and acts as if it is true, then depending on how you define truth, doesn't necessarily make it true, but it makes it so that the society acts in the interest of the government. Now, with social media, they can't do that anymore. So that's why you start seeing, I think that's a big thing when it comes to postmodernism. Well, there's a bunch of clusters of groups that form on social media who all believe in their same
And that's
truth
the
that
truth is
contradicts.
truth is localized. What
Yeah,
I
and
was
that
trying to say.
exactly, yeah, and then that truth contradicts with some other group's truth, and then they start clashing. That might be a big part of the division. But sorry, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I like that too. Going back to what you were talking about, like religion. We talked about religion a lot on this before. I saw an interesting post on this a little bit earlier. Like, how do you get a society to not steal, right? Think about it as game theory, right? If everyone in the society steals, are you better off stealing or not stealing? Stealing, right? If everyone in the society doesn't steal, are you better off stealing or not stealing? Well, you're
Probably
still
not
better
stealing.
off. What do you say?
Well,
Not.
okay, sorry. Well,
You're
no,
still
no,
better
sorry.
off
I was thinking a different way. Go
you're
ahead.
still better off stealing, right? Because I like break it down in like the game theory chart, like
Right, right.
comparative cost, right? It's like, all right, so I'll get into where everyone gets along, no one steals, I'll get 5 units. But when everyone's getting along and I steal, I'll get 10 units, right? And then on the other side, it's is everyone is stealing, I'll get 2 units, and I steal, I'll get 2 units. If everyone's stealing and I don't steal, I'll get 0 units. So you're always better off stealing,
Mhm.
right? In like the game theory aspect. So if the truth is everyone is better off stealing from one another individually, how do you get it where no one is stealing from each other to get the most societal benefit, that like 5-5 Punnett square, as opposed to like the 1-1 where everyone's stealing from each other? You get them all to believe a certain untruth, like there's a guy in the sky who's watching you, and if you steal, you're not going to be able to party for all eternity. You're going to actually be doomed for all eternity.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Establishing some sort of trust, and not only trust, but um, maybe like even honor, or I guess, I mean, reputation is a big one too. If you're playing one game one game theory game, and there's only
Right.
one round, then you can be the guy that steals and no one else steals and you win. But then,
Yeah, that's
if you're
true.
playing a sequence of these over and over and over, someone you
You,
see every day,
yeah,
you can't just steal from them one day and
right,
then,
right.
I work with you, I got to see you tomorrow,
That's yeah,
So it's
right. That's true.
something there too. But I mean, that could be one of those things that comes kind of back to what we're saying about just like the closer you are with people, or the more you feel, doesn't even have to be really close with someone, but the more you feel as if you identify with someone, the more you're willing to trust them versus, someone who you don't know. It's like, well, I'll probably never see this guy again. So I'm more willing to do him wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest questions of philosophy is what is truth, right? It's hard to define. Can you define truth without using the word truth? Like, what is truth? Something that is true, something that is real.
I mean, it's something that, um, yeah, it is harder than I thought it
Yeah,
would be.
right
It's
now, yeah,
something that is an accurate representation of reality. One thing I've heard a lot, it's a little bit different than truth, I guess, but I've heard something similar along the lines of like, something that's actually true is very good at predicting the future. So if you use like mathematical models, like if it's true, it'll be right in the future more times than any other model. That's like a mathematical truth. I think that's probably the closest thing to absolute truth that we have, is some form of mathematical proof.
yeah. I mean, because even there, like what I brought up, I couldn't wrap my brain around the fact that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west could be an untruth. Like you said, if it's able to predict the future, well, all right, I'll look out tomorrow and I'll see if it predicted the future. Oh, the sun rose in the east, that's probably true, right? And then every single time in the future when the sun rises in the east, it's predicting the future pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, one good thing about that, I'm a big like technology. I like looking in the technology part of it. I think that's a major part of like why math and science tend to be more like objective, less postmodernist thinking, is because if that's, you know, another way to define truth, I guess, is like, if I use this mathematical model to design something technological and it works, then my model must be right. But if it, or look at like computer software, like if the program runs and the website works, then my software must be right, versus if it doesn't work, then it's wrong. There's more of an objective truth when it comes to like math, science, things like that, versus when it comes to like the humanities and philosophy and history even, it's like I think the postmodernist thought is onto something there, but it also needs to be reined into the sense where it's like the scientific method should basically be applied to, those other fields as well in some way if possible.
Yeah, I mean, can anything in history be true?
Technology. I mean, part of the reason, like I like to look at a lot of historical events as relative to the technological innovations of the time. And like if you see, like a lot of shifts in power, you see a lot of big wars come after big booms in technology. And, though, that math, that science that was used to create the technology is really the truth, is at least as close to the truth as we can get. And what happened after it is just whatever the winning government decided to write about it. So, I mean, I guess one thing we could say accurately when looking at history is like that war did happen after that technology was made.
Yeah, I guess.
And one reason I say that is just because wars do tend to happen a lot around times of big emerging technologies, which in our time here with AI and blockchain and um, quantum computers and all these new technologies makes sense why there's a lot of civil strife and also global strife, I should say.
That's a pretty good lead in to another note I had written down. It ties into truth as well very nicely. Do you think it's possible that we've been being fooled by AI for much, much longer than any of us might think? And I bring this up because I had seen um, military like slash government technology is always far ahead of civilian technology. That's an understood kind of law for the most part, the truth, some might call it. The first GPS was available, I think, in 1974. Like the first technology was actually invented around 1974. The first consumer product GPS was around 2003. So that's like 30 years that governments had this technology that civilians didn't. Is it possible that since consumers are now able to play with this technology, that the government's actually been able to do this for a while?
I definitely think it's possible. I mean, I know that it was 2017, I believe, 2016 or 2017 when Google released the white paper for the transformer, which is the key technology in AI and when it comes to like visual AI. But I mean, there's plenty of other types of AI which I think have been being used. I don't know if we would describe them as AI in the sense that we know it today, but it was a similar idea. Like Palantir came around, quite a while ago. It was kind of in the post 9/11 era where, the NSA started data mining and then companies like Palantir were basically looking for these neural networks to kind of combine this data and use it for analysis. I guess generative AI, which is used to make pictures and videos and stuff like that, is supposedly a pretty new technology. Yeah, I mean, there would be no way of knowing if the CIA or like part of the deep state was already on that because although most of the government's documents are public, there's also the classified ones, and so we won't be able to know for a while. But yes, I mean most technologies do tend to be created by the government before before they reach a consumer market. So I wouldn't I wouldn't be super surprised by it if we found that out later on.
Yeah. So it feels like every like couple months there's some new AI thing that blows everyone's minds. I've been seeing Sora 2 recently, and the videos that people are able to make with it are actually just incredible. They look so similar to real life. I've been fooled by numerous AI videos in the past few weeks by it because you can pretty obviously tell when it's something crazy happening, like a dog like driving a car or something like that. But I've seen ones of just like people on a train. There's some meet cute of like a girl's filming and she like films with the guy next to her and she's like, "Oh, with my husband." And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah, hi, my name's Jeff," or whatever, right? Introduces himself. I kept scrolling, like 30 scrolls later, I see like a post talking about that video. It's like, I can't believe I got fooled by this. I'm like, I would have never known that that was fake unless I had seen that secondary video, which then made me think, how many fucking times have I not seen a follow up video and been fooled and not even realize?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's getting pretty good. I'm sure that that's not gonna be used for any nefarious purposes. I saw the one of, Sam Altman, on like a security camera, like stealing GPUs from a Best Buy or something. And it was, I mean, there
Even
is going to
those ones
become
are
a
made in
point.
good fun. Dude,
Yeah,
have you seen
right. Like, obviously that's fake, but I mean, it was just so realistic looking that if we didn't know any better, then it could easily be if anyone wanted to, they could easily use that to, try to fuck with an election or,
dude,
there's
did you
so many
see
ways to.
the Trump medbed video?
No.
Trump tweeted Trump truth socialed out a completely AI generated video. He probably just saw it somewhere on the internet and like, oh, that's cool, and posted it. But it was talking about the new medbed technology that's coming out. I don't know if you've heard of this. Apparently, this is some crackpot internet thing that people believe that there's these like medical capsules that you can lay in and they can like completely regenerate skin and tissue and eliminate cancer. It's basically like a cure-all crackpot thing that's not a real thing, but people are like, oh, the government has it and they're using it for the elites and not you. But Trump literally fucking posted an AI generated video about like this new outcoming medbed technology that we're pioneering.
No, I did not see this. That's pretty funny. So it's just nonsense or what?
No, dude, it's like the medbed thing is nonsense. That is just completely made up. But the thing Trump posted, it like looks like this is like a real thing that's coming out, and then he like deleted it like 20 minutes later because someone's like, "Dude, you gotta fucking like take this down, probably." But that leads into another thing I saw. Trump's trying to invade Portland now, I believe. Apparently, he like I saw some interview, not an interview. He like called up. He was talking to the governor of Oregon, and she was like, you don't need to send in the National Guard. This is not a state of emergency. And Trump says to her, this is an actual quote. Did I write this one down? I have it in my notes. I don't know. It's something absolutely hilarious. It's a Trump quote that says, are the, are the things I'm seeing on TV like not what's actually happening? And he's like asking that because, and then all the lefties on my algorithm were saying like, oh, dude, they're literally showing Trump like AI videos of like Portland getting like looted and like ransacked and shit. So they're like making him believe he's like gotta send in the National Guard or something.
That's honestly quite possible. I mean, that did happen with Biden. We know that. The book came out where they were just like not necessarily showing him AI videos, but just telling him things that weren't real to try to, all the people around him were like telling him stuff that wasn't real to try to push across, whatever policy they preferred. That could actually very well be possible with Trump too. I mean, he's pretty much the same age and,
Trump
maybe
is sundowning, bro. You could tell. We talked about this. You watch his 2016 fucking debates, and he is whip crack sharp. And now, dude, he like talks like fucking spewing molasses.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's definitely not nearly as sharp as he used to be. And now, even it was only less than a year ago that Biden was in office. And like, even then, we did not have AI nearly as good as we do now when it comes to generating videos. And so it's very possible that, you know, there Trump is seeing stuff that's AI generated and believing that it's real. Like he could be falling for it. I mean, we just both admitted that we've fallen for it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he was too. You would think that if everyone had the same interest in mind, which was, the interest of the United States of America, that people wouldn't be close to the president showing them things that are fake or, anything that would get to his table would have to go through, people who knew what they're talking about. But in our day and age, I don't know that that's true at all. I think
It
I
also
don't.
doesn't stop Trump from scrolling on his fucking Twitter feed or his Truth Social feed and seeing completely fake shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. I mean, I have been watching some of the Portland stuff. I mean, it's pretty similar to what's going on in Chicago. It looks like basically, he sends in the National Guard or ICE, and then what happens is that before they even do anything, obviously a bunch of people are going to go protest and start chanting fascist and stuff like that. And it is just, I mean, we said it before in the last episode, like him doing that alone is creating a state of emergency because people are then going to get all fired up. He's basically like baiting the left to try to go protest so that some, little skirmishes happen. And then now it's, oh, well, now they attacked a police officer. So now we can bring in more stuff like that. I mean, I do think it's a little bit of both sides on this too. I will 100% say Trump's going totally overboard and causing more problems than good when it comes to bringing in the National Guard and ICE into these cities. At the same time, I will say like the governors of these cities, or I mean the governors of the states, the mayors of these cities are not doing a great job either. Making like if that's what he's looking to do is cause chaos, then they're falling right into his trap. And I feel like they're also kind of in on the shtick, which is, publicity is good publicity. I can be
Yeah.
the way same way Trump can be I'm the guy who saved the city and brought in law and order. Well, then these mayors are saying I could be the guy that stood up to fascism, and like realistically, it is all just like kind of nonsense talk, and they're creating the problems. They're not solving any problems.
Dude, it kind of plays off of like a month or two ago when we talked. I don't want to get it wrong. I don't know. It was one of our adversaries. It might have been Iran. I think it was Iran in the Middle East where something went down. I think they bombed our uh, military base in Qatar, right? Because it was like a retaliatory strike. And I said it was a win-win-win for everyone involved, right? Because Iran gets to say, well, we bombed the United States military base and they didn't do shit back to us. So they get to proclaim that win. uh Israel got to proclaim the win of like being able to go in and bomb some Syrians in Qatar, which, like, oh, we took out some Hamas top agents or whatever. Then the United States got to win because they got to say we kept law and order in the Middle East. We stopped like a big thing from blowing up. It's once again seems like they're playing political theater at the biggest scale and not good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm fully convinced that pretty much everything that's like a major talking point in politics is political theater. I feel like it like we've talked about before too. Most of the it's a democracy, and so you need the votes of most of the population. Most of the population is attracted to sensationalism, and you need to keep their attention in a world that is like entirely designed at this point to stop anyone from having an attention span longer than 60 seconds. And so that's what's winning now in these democratic nations. Meanwhile, I think in the East, where it's not a democratic nation, they don't need to worry about the political theater and appealing to the people nearly as much as we do. um, I feel like that's where our problem lies right now. I feel like that's part of the division. I mean, when you look across Europe, we're not the only ones going through political division right now.
Europe's pretty fucked.
Polarization,
The
populism.
UK is totally fucked. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems like it's a Western crisis mostly, and I'm sure it's in the East too. I mean, I've heard a lot of that China's going through similar problems too. It's hard to tell because so much of what we see is just propaganda one way or the other. So somewhere all the way across the world, it's like impossible to tell what's actually happening there. Pretty much everything we hear about that could be just nonsense.
the UK is in total crisis. I know. They're having larger and larger protests. They're losing their freedom of speech there, which is one of the things that we hold most sacred. Like France is constantly rioting. I mean, they kind of riot every few years. That's kind of just what they're best at. But I've seen other nations are kind of going through like similar things. I think like Italy is kind of doing the same thing that we're doing, kind of sliding authoritarian right a little bit. And yeah, I agree. It is seemingly a Western issue, but then I have also, like you said, I've seen things about like there's a housing crisis in China as well. I think there might be having like some monetary issues as well, but like you said, it's pretty impossible to tell what's actually happening, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely impossible to tell because it is the medium that we're looking through too. If we're seeing what's going on social media, it's obviously we know firsthand that most of the things you see on social media are skewed one way or the other, at the very least, if not entirely fake. So it's impossible to tell for sure. I mean, reading books is a good answer. It's still impossible to tell for sure, but it's a little bit more It's probably a closer version of the truth than you'll see in some type of propaganda post somewhere on Twitter or TikTok or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Want a quick break, then do like another 20 minutes or something?
Yeah, I'm down.
Sounds good. Alright, yeah. What else we got here? Maybe we can do another like 20, 30 minutes.
So I think I have a decent tie-in. Oh yeah, we were talking about like local news at the end there, right? Like what's going on in China or whatever. I saw a quote from Steve from Blues Clues. It was something along the lines of, "We are both like too informed and not informed enough." He says, "I can tell you how some political pundit made Ted Cruz feel bad about something, but I can't tell you who my local comptroller is."
Yeah, that is that is very true. I know nothing about local politics at all.
Yeah, and yet we think we can solve these huge macro uh, fucking world issues. That's what we talk about. It's not, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. The things you can actually kind of affect, no one really gives a shit about.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting one. Is that also social media just making the like, because if this was a time before social media, it would be kinda the opposite, I feel like. You'd care, like, much more about what's going on in your city compared to, like, like, we wouldn't know anything about a lot of this stuff happening at the federal level probably, or if you'd hear, like, the big stories, but that wouldn't be, like, what you're following, or was it? I don't know.
Yeah. But I had the only other two things I have written down is one thing about ChatGPT, which that one won't be that long. And the only other thing I'd written down was Pete Hegseth calling in all the top military commanders and bitching about transgenders and fat people and
But
DEI.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Let's
So
start
we
with
can do
that
that.
one.
We can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that one right
I'm
before we start.
I'm I'm gonna defend Pete Hegseth on this one.
Right before we start that one. Did I send you the FanDuel win I had the other day?
No, I don't think
It
so.
was insane. $3 bet, 9 legs, won $666.
Holy shit, nice.
Yeah. And I won another one for like 200. So I won like 850 on the day. It was a nice day.
Were you betting on the football games? Nice. I don't think I've ever won one that big or like that much. What was that? Like plus like 20,000 or something? Yeah, that's
22,000.
fucking
Yeah.
insane.
Insane.
I had a decent one on I had a decent baseball one the other day in like the wild card series, but dude, speaking of that, I know the Cubs are playing them all. Cubs are looking like shit.
I
So
mean, the
yeah,
Brewers are too good.
I know, too good.
They're insane. All right. Should I start off with that Steve from Blues Clues line? And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, go with that one.
yeah. All right, we'll
Yeah,
go with
yeah.
that one. The main last one we'll do is Hegseth. This is the Hegseth one. And then we should be pretty good on time, I think. All right. Uh, Welcome back from break, everyone. We're kind of talking about global politics right at the end of there. There's a nice tie-in to a Blues Clues, Steve from Blues Clues quote I saw the other day. He's basically saying, essentially, we are too informed on some issues and not informed at all on other issues. The example he brought up was, I can tell you exactly how some news pundit made Ted Cruz feel bad about a certain issue, but I can't tell you who's on my local education board or who my local comptroller is. I thought that was kind of shook a chord with me. It was pretty interesting. People love talking about global societal issues, talking about national issues on a broad level. But the place you can actually make the most difference, your local community, I bet most people are woefully uninformed on, which I am too.
Yeah, I definitely am too, and I think I wonder if that is like a product of social media as well, where everyone's kind of just focused in on the big stuff rather than, because back in the day before social media, I would imagine that people probably were not nearly as focused in on like what's going on at the federal level or the global level as much as they were in their community level. I wonder if it's that. Could it also just be that the local power has been so deteriorated because of the accumulation of power by the federal government, that's now what people are nationally inclined to pay attention to. I mean, at the end of the day, it seems like the federal government being taken over by a corrupt power, say, is a bigger threat to survival or to, prosperity than the local government, because the local government you can easily move, I guess. So it seems like more of an existential threat. What's going on with the federal government just attracts our attention more. Could be, a little bit of both of those, I guess. But it is a
Yeah.
strange phenomenon because it's like, yeah, I mean, when it comes to your day to day life, you'd think you'd be affected much more by your local government and local community. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be very exciting to any of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a mixture of both. It certainly has to do with social media, just the fact that you can now cram down unlimited information about, the entire nation rather than, 50 years ago, someone running for like the local school boards like I can't stand Jim Miller. Like we gotta do something to keep him off the school board and keep him from indoctrinating our kids, right? Um
Yeah. Honestly,
that's
thinking of that, could it also be that? Could it be the fact that, if you have kids at the local school and you own a property in the local area, you probably care a lot more about your local government. But, people our age, most of us, as we saw on one of the last episodes, aren't married, don't have kids, don't have any properties. And so what do we have? US dollars. We have a job that is no longer just a local mom and pop shop. You probably work at a nationwide or even global company that, depends much more on the federal government than they do on local governments. We use US dollars, which is dependent on the central bank. maybe it could literally just be that the federal government has encroached so much into our generation's lives, so much more than our local government has.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time, that your local government passed some ordinance and you, like, gave a shit about it?
Could
Basically
not tell you,
never?
yeah.
Yeah,
No, never once. But that I
yeah.
mean, if I owned property,
But if you
I could
owned
see it being
property
different.
and like you said, if you have kids going to the local schools, then yeah, you actually probably would care how resources are being allocated.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, it it just seems like they kinda going back to, like, the whole socialism, capitalism thing where or not socialism, hang on, let me re-say that. Going back to the whole, empathy thing that we talked about how, like, someone who's conservative has more empathy for the people that are close to them, but not so much for people they don't know, where those on the left have, like, more of a collective empathy, where they'll be able to empathize with someone they don't know. It kinda seems like it correlates with that in a way where, like, I would bet that a lot of people would support more. I would bet that there's a lot of people on the middle who would support more socialist policies at a local level, but more capitalist policies at a federal level. Um, for that reason, because it's like the people around you, your local government. I could see that becoming more of a maybe socialist clusters within the capitalist federation. I feel like that a lot of people could probably get behind. But no one cares about the local.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think we'll move on to our last big one we might do here for the day. Local, not local. What's his name? Secretary of War, Pete Keg's Breath, called in the local, that's local again, Jesus, called in all of the top military brass from around the world, not local. He called in everyone, all the top players in the military to give him a speech. I saw people for a week on my side of the algorithm. They're like, "Oh fuck, this is it. This is it. They're invading America. They're declaring martial law. This is what's about to go down. This is their final trump card." And then it turns out, no, he just kind of wanted to call everyone in for his super machismo, anti DEI, anti woke, anti transgender, anti fat uh, agenda. And that to me was one big fucking shit show. What did you get out of that?
I agree. I think it was a shit show for all the Democrats who said that, "Oh, this is it. It's gonna be the fascist takeover," and it turned out all we were doing was getting rid of the fat people, getting rid of the transgenders. I think, all jokes aside, I think it's very reasonable that when it comes to the military, shaming should be allowed. These are the people that have to go to the front lines. These should be if you want to join the military, you should have to be able to pass the fitness test. That seems like a no-brainer to me. They keep changing the fitness test, bringing it down so that we can make sure we're diversified in the military. And I'm not talking diverse when it comes to ideas or diverse when it comes to ethnicity. I'm talking we want to make sure we have, the same amount of men as women or, proportionate amounts of transgenders or LGBTQ or, plus size people. It's like, what are we talking about here? All this should matter in this case. If we want to talk about meritocracy, the military should be the number one place where we say, this is a meritocracy only. Here's the test. You pass the test, you're in. If you don't, you're out.
Yeah, I won't disagree that you want physically fit soldiers. I don't know. That one was way overblown in terms of what people expected it to be. I saw people literally fucking freaking out over it. Just to, what is it? What is the point of that though?
I mean, I think when it comes to like getting the fitness test in order, I think it's very reasonable. It's like, if you're just discriminating against people based on their appearance, that's a different thing than like making sure that you are able to pass the tests that you need to pass to be physically fit enough to go into the military, which is what I thought that was. But I mean, on as far as like what people were thinking, oh, this is it. He's gonna do the fascist takeover. He's gonna have everyone. I saw people saying he's gonna have everyone pledge the oath of loyalty or something like that. That's not surprising because they keep doing that with everything. And I've been saying this, but it undermines their actual points. Like everyone who came out and said Trump is dead, like everyone's talking about like Trump is dead,
Uh huh.
and it was like, okay, you were wrong again. And like they never actually come out and say like, these are real reporters. They come out, they say, "Yeah, we have reports that Trump is dead," and then they never actually come out and say like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. We were wrong." They just say like, "Well, he wasn't dead, but now he's doing a fascist takeover." Like it's like every single day there's like a new thing where we hyper scrutinize everything Trump does. And I'm saying this like from the left side because I'm not a fan of all the right wing, far right things that Trump is doing either. And I wish it would come back towards the middle. But the problem is that it's the polarization aspect where if like if every single thing he does is fascist, then nothing is fascist. If you know what I mean. And so like if oh he called a meeting with the generals, that's top news today, and it's like not you know like it's like let's wait till the story comes out. That's my grievances with the so-called reporters who keep saying things that aren't true.
Yeah, because then when he actually does invade cities with the military, and then you call him a fascist,
Yeah,
it's
we've
like,
heard it
well,
before. Doesn't even mean anything anymore, you know? So, I think that is a big problem, and I gotta put most of that on, like, the left-wing media, of course, because they're not doing I mean, you obviously, it looks like this country is going into a civil war if we're not there already. I mean, what would you consider it when you've got federal agents, uh
fighting with
yeah,
local police. Dude, do you see
fighting
that
with local
ICE tear
police.
gassed the CPD?
Yeah, right. That looks like a civil war to me. It looks like the start of it. And at the end in the history books, I mean, like we said, the history books are never accurate, but if they were accurate, I don't think that they would say Trump single-handedly caused a civil war. I think it would be the very immature and grotesque left-wing media combined with this populist, combative buffoon who doesn't care what anyone thinks of him. That's what caused the civil war. There is a both sides to that.
Well, I guess we'll have to see who wins for 100 years from now. See what the truth is.
Yeah, I would bet. I mean, this is a good question too to kind of close off on. But who, if there was a civil war, who do you think wins? I think the right wins. They've got the guns, they've got the military, they've got the police.
Bro, it's like not it wouldn't even be like right versus left though, would it? It would just be like
Yeah, true.
the federal government versus I guess
Federal
like
versus states would
states,
be.
and the Fed would win.
It would also be a weird thing because like not every police officer is right you know like it's the strange thing about this one is that normally prior to social media, these type of conflicts would be like geographically bound, you know, like s- the first civil war, it was this, you know, the people in this state versus people in this state. There was like a geographical boundary, whereas now it's like if the right and the left were to go to civil war, it'd be like I'd be, you know, look at my neighborhood, it's like half and half, you know.
Well, that's why I'm saying like I don't even know like what a civil war like looks like. I don't think they're how would that physically work? It kind of like doesn't.
No, I mean it'd be I mean if the if the federal, like, ICE and, like, the military I mean, did you also see that Greg Abbott is sending the I can't remember the name of it, but, like, the
Texas National Guard.
yeah, the Texas National Guard to Chicago to support
Yes.
ICE because the Chicago police won't support ICE because the mayor of Chicago said not to. It's like it's just I mean, realistically, like, us civilians might not be involved in the war at all, but I could see these kind of militarized forces coming into conflict and it becoming, like, a bit of a battle. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always I learned this from a guy who was he was like a Green Beret, he's a pretty badass dude, but we were talking about this and he was telling me like at the end of the day, even in the future when there's AI bots and drones and in that at the end of the day, it needs to be a physical person representing one warring faction who either, you know, conquers the territory or eliminates the physical person in the other faction. That's how a war is won. That's the end. I mean, you could have bots fight each other. You could do cyber wars. You can argue online. You can do trade wars. But these are all just levels of escalation. And in order for a war to end, like a real person must conquer another real person. So I feel like either that happens or we just decide, oh, let's just all get along again. We'll settle our differences. Which one is more likely? I feel like the first one is more likely.
It's got to be settling our differences. I just physically cannot see like street warfare among civilians. I could see in the next like couple months, years, possibly, like the like the Texas National Guard had a little bit of a scuffle with CPD, like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. the
Yeah,
Fed
I
would
guess
win out.
defining it as full-on civil war, it might not be a civil war the way we're visualizing a civil war, but it'll be some type of, like there will have to be some winner. I mean, unless do you actually think there's a possibility that, the right and left can somehow just, like, come back together and get back to business as usual? I feel like we're
Yeah,
beyond that, or maybe I'm just
no,
too much online, I don't know.
I think the way it would happen, I don't think politicians will be able to get us out of this. I think the populace has to get us out of this. It has to be some form of like social media movement, some sort of like anti-war unity movement, essentially saying like something has to change before this fucking gets out of hand. And so many people see it online. It's like almost inevitable at that point that some change has to come because it's all anyone talks about and we
Yeah,
can
some
do it.
form of, like, mediating movement where both sides can kinda get behind it,
Yes.
and then maybe, there'd have to be probably an enemy, but if the enemy was, the politicians themselves, and it was I see what you're
I think that's what it is.
that is, like, the happy ending, which I can see happening, and I hope it does happen. That would be awesome, actually.
Politicians do not have our best interests at heart. I'm sure I've brought this study up before. It is very much worth reiterating. Yale ran a study. If 100% of corporations wanted a bill to be passed, it had about a 60% chance of being passed. If 0% of corporations wanted a bill to be passed, it had a 0% chance of being passed. If 100% of the American population wanted a bill to be passed, it had about a 30% chance of being passed. If 0% of the American population wanted a bill to be passed, it had about a 30% chance of getting passed. What does that tell you? It tells you the American people do not have a voice in their governance right now.
Yeah, well, that or the fact that I feel like most people are just not paying attention, which is good in most sense, but, I mean, I guess I kind of contradicted myself here because a lot of it is that, like, I don't even know how to word it, but it almost seems like people are pro-Trump, they're not pro-Trump's policies. Like, they don't care what he does, they support it. They support Trump,
Yes.
they support whatever he does. They don't even know what they want, and I feel like that's the same way on the left too. They want socialist policies, but when Trump does it, it's not good. So it's like, I feel like that's the part that scares me a little bit, is just that it almost seems like we're beyond even, like, policy at this point. It's a personality kinda thing, it's like a tribal thing, but it's not to say that it's impossible for it to come back
So then the
together.
zeitgeist just has to change away from polarization towards unity.
There would have to be, yeah, there would have to be some type of, like, I mean,
That's the
there
movement we're starting.
is it almost a f yeah, I mean, hope that's what we're going for, definitely. It's if it catches on, that'd be great. I mean, I do think it'll catch on eventually. I almost think there might need to be, like, a foreign, adversary or something that we can, you know, the
That we can all unite around.
The
Yeah.
problem is the elites. I mean, the elites drive by elites, I mean, like, politicians, media, and big corporations. They drive the narrative. If the media is constantly making the boogeyman out to be the other political side, well, then there's gonna be this continued polarization. If the media were to get all under control and pointed in the same direction, at something that's like it could be aliens, it could be climate change, even whatever, but something where, like, both sides of the media can stop attacking each other and start attacking, like, something else that we can all work together on, then I think that that is doable. And you would think that,
Yeah.
like, it would be in the interest of the media to do something like that too, because if they keep doing this, it's not going to help them. It's self-destructive.
Do they this is where I always question like our cabal theory. Is there like a group pulling the strings? Because if there is, what the fuck are they doing? What the fuck is the long-term goal? Really actually seems much more likely that there is no long-term goal. That everyone is just doing what they think is best for them right fucking now. They have to gain an advantage right now. We have to do whatever we can. So a year from now, we're better off. And 50 years from now, fuck, I'm going to be dead probably. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the second one. It's people acting towards their individual incentives, and the incentives with the creation of social media and these new digital kind of landscapes that we're living in, the incentives became so misaligned. I mean, I think that is pretty much like a good summary of the source of a lot of the problems. That combined with the money printing that we talked about last episode, I think that it's basically like if everyone acts in their own interest, it used to help the collective, but we're getting to the point where it no longer does.
Yeah, or we've kind of just shirked that social contract, that agreement for the most part. And, like I mentioned earlier, the game theory of, all right, if everyone works along, everyone gets 5 units. Now people are starting to switch back maybe a little bit towards, well, if I steal in the short term, I get 8 units as opposed to that five if I got along with everyone.
Yeah, I definitely been seeing that a lot, but when it comes, like, between political parties too, where there used to be kind of at least, remnants of some codes of conduct of what's cool and what's not cool, when you're talking politics. And now you go on, and now it's like people wishing for each other's deaths and like you just blatant lying. It used to be like it wasn't like bad to spin the narrative a little bit, like that's what everyone would do. But it was at least like the objective things that you would say would be like have some truth to it. There's a way to frame it that way. And now I'm seeing like the biggest, most popular, most engagements, all these very like what's the word? The in the limelight posts and influencers and stuff like that, they're just like blatantly lying about things that like didn't actually even happen whatsoever, just objectively false. And
You
that
used to
just
have a
seems to be the norm now. Like,
you used to have nuance to your like spinning, right? It's like, oh, so this is what happened, and like here's how we're gonna present it. Here's how we're gonna like play it to our people. Now it's just kind of like spew a bunch of bullshit and see what sticks.
yeah, like the Kyle Rittenhouse was a good one because it was like leftist media is saying like, the headline is, like pro-Trump white man shows up to Black Lives Matter riot and shoots protesters. And then the right-wing media was like, patriot attacked by violent rioters defends himself using the Second Amendment. And it was like both of those are factually true, but they're just spun in a way that appeals to one side or the other. But at this point, we're beyond that. We're just saying things that aren't even, there's no, like I saw one today and it was like, yeah, like ICE pulled up on an innocent woman, rammed her with their car, uh, told her to deal with it, and then shot her. And it was like, that is just objectively false. Like that, the story they're referring to, the woman rammed them, pulled out a gun, and they shot her. And it's like, there's many ways you could frame that story to fit the left wing narrative too, without totally flipping the story and making things up. So I feel like I mean, that's not a one sided thing either. That's both sides are at the point of just like making things up now. And so I guess the point being the codes of conduct are kind of out the window, and we're seeing it just kind of come, you know, spiral out of
crashing
control. Yeah, come
crashing
crashing
down.
down.
Codes of conduct are out the window. Back to what the main topic of this debate was, not debate, this conversation was the truth. The truth has gone out the window too. The truth does not fucking matter anymore because you can post something and it can be somewhat true, a little bit true, all the way true, or not true at all. And it really doesn't matter. People are gonna fucking read and absorb it and react to it, regardless of how true it is.
Yeah, that goes back to that, the Ray Dalio, that was one of Ray Dalio's indicators that we are approaching a civil war, was that truth and principle are no longer considered valuable at all.
Yep. Think that's a good spot to close it out.
Alright, yep, that's a good spot to close it out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you next
Yep.
time.
Thanks.